welcome back to the show. Birch Family Services is a leading provider of education, employment, as well as community support services for individuals with autism and developmental disabilities and their families in New York City. And we're pleased to have joining us the CEO of Birch Family Services, Matthew Sturiale. And we thank you so much, Matthew, for being with us, Matt.
Well, thank you, Darren. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to spend a few minutes with you today.
Yeah, we're in the season of back to school, and I know that for you that means some heavy lifting, but you guys have continued to do some great work, particularly with families and then those with developmental disabilities. Give us a little insight into your organization.
Sure. Well, we were founded 45 years ago, and we were founded based on the premise. Our founder felt that children with developmental delays or disabilities, such as autism, intellectual disabilities, cerebral palsy, needed the appropriate type of attention. And so under the right to a free and appropriate education for all, she founded the Birch Family Services, starting out initially as an education program that would provide school-age children with an opportunity to learn and reach their fullest potential. Over the last 45 plus years, we've expanded to be a multi-service agency providing an array of opportunities for children ages 3 to 21 in terms of early childhood and school-age education programs. We offer community support services such as housing, residential services, community supports, family support, and education, as well as life skills training and employment for people across the different developmental disability spectrum.
And for yourself, I know that really taking a look at those with autism and services of that nature. But let's drill down for a second, because when we talk about providing these services, what are some of the services that are needed that maybe us as the general population may not necessarily know that are needed?
Sure. So just starting with the concept of back to school, which we operate 9 schools in the New York metropolitan area. We have 3 in the Bronx. One's in Soundview, one's in Pelham Bay, and another one is in Riverdale. And starting with our education programs, it really was looking at supporting people with autism and other developmental disabilities to reach their fullest potential. So making sure that people had the opportunity to learn and to thrive and to learn the skills necessary. So we started very early on looking at early intervention supports for families or pediatricians who may realize that a child is not learning or communicating at the same pace, to be evaluated, and based on that evaluation, perhaps participate in early childhood programs such as our preschool program. Our preschool programs serve children 3 to 5, which are all 3 are located in the Bronx, serving over 300 kids each year with developmental delays, but we also do universal pre-K. So we offer all of those opportunities for people with both developmental delays and typically developing children.
And you also offer residential services as well. I know it's a part of the work that you do. Give us a little to tell us about the residential services and how
Sure.
that's impacting families.
Sure. So I mean, 50 years ago, some older New Yorkers may remember that Geraldo Rivera exposed some of the atrocities that were taking place at the Willowbrook State School and the lack of support and care that was being provided. And I think Birch at the time agreed to be offering housing support to children, adolescents who were away in the state schools, to come back to their communities. And since then, we not only supported people who were in developmental centers and state schools to move out into the community in the lesser restrictive setting and the more independent setting and to be closer to their families, but also offered opportunities for families who had their child or adult child at home needing 24-hour care and support to move into a community residence in their community. So we operate several residences across New York City that provide 24-hour supports for individuals. So as families are getting older and they begin planning for what their child may need as an adult, we are able to offer those opportunities. And for those people who are more independent, we also offer supported housing for people who can move into their own apartment, but with staff coming in to support them a couple of hours a day, a couple of days a week, they're able to do that. So people can lead full lives.
I know one of the things that you're proud of is you just really had a back to school fundraiser, and as kids are getting back to class, they'll be going with a little extra boost.
Yes, yes, actually, that's true. As I mentioned, our school opened up on Tuesday. And the work that our staff does is tremendous. Our teachers assistants and our related services staff in our schools, and welcoming children back of all ages into our school programs are great. But we also like to get them all started with a fresh start. So part of our back to school campaign is really trying to make sure that all students get the right kind of materials to get started. So we did a fundraiser online, and teachers and principals made up their wish list of what they'd like. And it's anything from having backpacks for children and families who might not have the means, and particularly with inflation going on right now, and some of the other challenges that families are experiencing, giving families a package of supplies to be able to support their child at home, and get the students off to the right foot that way, to supplies such as iPads and so on and so forth to be able to do that. So we've raised several $1,000s so far, and the campaign's continuing right now to be able to get us off to the right start.
COVID has had its impact on everybody, and particularly for your organization. Give us a little and tell us about how it's actually impacted and how you're able to still maintain being able to provide for these families in the midst of this pandemic.
The pandemic, as you know, has been particularly challenging, and we're still navigating it. As you know, we're learning more and more about it. And I think one of the things that we were very fortunate to be able to do was immediately move to first remote instruction, to then move into what was a hybrid model where children were coming in a couple of days a week. And now we've been into full-time classroom instruction. And I think, it was very, very important for young children, but children of all ages really, to get the right types of support. Children felt somewhat isolated, families felt somewhat isolated, and trying to provide that additional encouragement and communication to families around what else we could be doing. I'm trying to ensure people's safety first and foremost, our students, our staff, our families, but then beyond that, supporting them in helping their child learn if they were either at home, but now that they're back in school full-time, building on some of the social skills that young children need, or building on some of the skills that perhaps people did not have as much opportunity to practice on a day-to-day basis when they weren't in class every day. And I think some of the emotional connections is something also with some mental health supports to our families and students has also been helpful.
Yeah. About that social emotional connection, we know that a lot of people experience that simply being detached, having to do this, coming from a virtual environment. How particularly stressful was it for your clientele, given the fact that that social emotional component just wasn't there, and a lot of us had to rely on virtual?
It was a very challenging time, and I think it was a very challenging time for students, young students trying to learn through remote engagement is somewhat difficult in terms of maintaining, particularly children with delays, but all children struggle with being able to connect. Part of the important part of early childhood education is the social emotional connections and beginning to make social connections. Trying to do that in a remote situation is difficult. So that was challenging. Challenging for our staff in terms of how to instruct people when you're not physically in the same room with one another. So I think reconnecting again and bringing people in partially and then fully into a full day of school has been tremendously helpful. But I think sometimes our families felt isolated. I think what was helpful was that the communication between our families and our teachers, between our families and understanding how their children learn was helpful, but it was also very, very stressful for them. So trying to keep those lines of communication open was very, very critical.
Yeah. So for families that may want to participate in your services, who's eligible to participate and how do they get connected?
Well, the simplest thing I would encourage people to do is go to our website, which is www.birchfamilyservices.org. And on there is a listing of all of our schools or all of the other different types of programs we operate, from our education programs, our residential programs, to our housing initiatives around supported housing, and our New Frontier program, which is really focusing on young adults on the spectrum, securing employment in the workplace or focusing on health and wellness in the community. And so if you go to our website, there's a place to click on the link for services, and one will be able to do that. If your child is experiencing any sort of delays that's brought to your attention by their pediatrician, or your own observation that your child is not maybe speaking or developing their motor skills as quickly as possible, or along the same developmental milestones that you're thinking, it's always good to have an evaluation done. And sometimes your pediatrician may make a referral for an evaluation, or the Committee on Preschool Special Education can do that. And we do that as well. And we can help secure an evaluation to see if there are any delays there. And so going to our website can help direct you towards those services.
Yeah, well, Matthew, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and being with us. And I appreciate having you, and certainly would love to have you back.
It was great having it. The time flew, I'll tell you that. It was.
Yeah, it does. Time flies. The old saying says time flies when you're having fun. And we did have a good conversation.
Yes, it was a pleasure meeting you, and thank you for all that you're doing for the Bronx community and public information.
Thank you, Matt Sturiale, who is from the Birch Family Services. He's the CEO, and we thank him for joining us. And if you want more information, we encourage you visit the website at birchfamilyservices.org, and then follow them also on Instagram at Birch Family Services NYC. We encourage you, don't go anywhere. We got more show coming up right after this.